There's this new frontier in tech that's really fascinating, an area where artificial intelligence is merging with neuroscience to do something that was once thought impossible, deciphering human thoughts. And it's not science fiction. It's happening right now. Companies are developing ways to read your mind using AI. And it's incredibly precise. They can tell if you're thinking about an elephant or a motorcycle just from looking at your brain activity. But how does this technology work? How accurate is it? And what does it mean for the future of AI and our understanding of the brain? These are some of the questions we'll explore in this episode of SCI Show. And it's going to be one wild ride. Now, when most people think about reading minds, they're usually talking about figuring out what someone is thinking by observing their behavior, their facial expressions, the tone of their voice, things like that. In other words, inferring what someone is thinking based on observable data. But the type of mind reading we are talking about today is something else entirely. This is a literal mind read, taking a look inside the brain to figure out what's going on up there. The idea of being able to read someone's mind might seem like a far-fetched concept, something that belongs in the realm of science fiction rather than in the world of cutting-edge technology. However, recent advances in artificial intelligence and neuroscience have made it a reality. Companies such as Kernel and Neurotech are developing non-invasive brain-computer interfaces that can decode brain activity with incredible accuracy. They do this by training AI algorithms on massive amounts of data from functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, machines. fMRI scans measure brain activity by detecting changes in blood flow. When a particular part of the brain becomes active, it requires more oxygenated blood, which creates a signal that can be picked up by an fMRI machine. By analyzing these signals, researchers can identify the regions of the brain that are involved in processing specific types of information. For example, studies have shown that the hippocampus is involved in processing memories, while the prefrontal cortex is involved in decision-making. This information can then be used to train an AI algorithm to recognize patterns in brain activity that correspond to specific thoughts or intentions. In one study published in Nature Neuroscience, researchers at the University of California, San Francisco trained an AI algorithm to decode brain activity while participants were performing a simple visual task. The algorithm was fed data from an fMRI machine and was tasked with identifying the regions of the brain that were most active when participants were looking at specific types of images. After training, the algorithm was able to accurately decode brain activity even when the participants were performing the task in a different environment. This suggests that the algorithm was able to identify the underlying neural correlates of cognition, the specific patterns of brain activity that correspond to certain thoughts or mental states. Another study published in the journal Neuron took this a step further. Researchers at the University of California, Los Angeles trained an AI algorithm to decode brain activity while participants were performing a more complex task, this time involving both visual and auditory stimuli. The algorithm was able to accurately decode brain activity even when the participants were performing the task in a different order than it had been trained on. This suggests that the algorithm was able to identify the high-level representations of concepts and ideas in the brain rather than just low-level features like color or shape. So let's say an AI has successfully decoded the neural correlates of a particular thought or concept. How exactly is it doing this? Well, it all comes down to the structure of the brain and how different regions are connected. The brain is a highly complex organ made up of billions of neurons that are interconnected by trillions of synapses. Neurons are the basic unit of the nervous system, and they transmit information throughout the body via electrical and chemical signals. When a neuron is stimulated, it can generate an electrical signal that travels down its axon, a long, slender projection that extends from the neuron cell body. When the signal reaches the end of the axon, it can transmit a chemical signal across the synapse to the next neuron, and this process can continue until the signal reaches its destination. This intricate network of neurons and synapses allows the brain to perform a wide range of functions, from basic motor functions to complex cognitive tasks. The human brain is organized into distinct regions that are specialized for different functions. For example, the occipital lobe is responsible for processing visual information, while the temporal lobe is responsible for processing auditory information. Within each region, there are multiple areas that are involved in different aspects of processing. For example, the visual cortex is responsible for processing basic features of visual stimuli, such as color and orientation, while more advanced visual processing occurs in other parts of the occipital lobe. To understand how AI decodes thoughts, it's helpful to know how these regions and networks in the brain are organized. Large language models such as GPT use transformer networks to process and generate text. Transformer networks are a type of deep learning algorithm that uses attention mechanisms to weigh the importance of different parts of an input sequence when making a prediction. This allows the model to focus on the most relevant information and generate more accurate outputs. LLMs have revolutionized natural language processing tasks such as text generation, translation, and question answering. They can generate coherent and contextually appropriate responses to natural language inputs and have achieved state-of-the-art results on a wide range of benchmarks. So how do large language models work? One way to think about it is that LLMs are like very advanced autocomplete systems. As you type on a keyboard, the system predicts what word you're going to type next based on the context of the sentence you've already typed. However, LLMs are much more sophisticated than simple autocomplete. They use deep learning algorithms to analyze vast amounts of training data and learn the statistical relationships between words. This means that they can generate completely new sentences and even paragraphs that make sense and are grammatically correct. LLMs have many practical applications, including chatbots, virtual assistants, and content creation tools. They can also be used for more specialized tasks such as legal document review or medical diagnosis. Decoding thoughts with AI involves a lot more than just knowing the anatomy of the brain. It also requires a detailed understanding of how the brain works on a cellular level. Neuroscientists have discovered that neurons don't just passively receive and transmit signals. They can actually modify their connections and even grow new ones based on their activity. This process is known as neuroplasticity, and it's thought to be essential for learning and memory. Neuroplasticity occurs at both the cellular and molecular level. For example, neurons can strengthen their connections with other neurons through a process known as synaptic plasticity. This can occur through various mechanisms, but one of the best understood is long-term potentiation, LTP. LTP occurs when a presynaptic neuron repeatedly stimulates a postsynaptic neuron, causing the postsynaptic neuron to become more sensitive to signals from the presynaptic neuron. This strengthens the connection between the two neurons and makes it more likely that they will communicate with each other in the future. In addition to synaptic plasticity, neurons can also modify their structure through a process known as structural plasticity. This can involve changes in the number of synapses between neurons, as well as changes in the size and shape of neurons themselves. Structural plasticity is thought to play a role in learning and memory, as well as in response to injury or disease. By understanding the mechanisms of neuroplasticity, neuroscientists have been able to develop new treatments for neurological disorders such as stroke and traumatic brain injury. They've also been able to develop new interventions for psychiatric disorders such as depression and addiction. So how does this relate to decoding thoughts with AI? Well, the ability to modify brain connections through neuroplasticity may one day allow us to directly influence the neural correlates of cognition. By understanding the mechanisms of neuroplasticity, it may be possible to develop new interventions for neurological and psychiatric disorders. It may also be possible to develop new ways to enhance cognitive function or to restore function in individuals who have suffered brain injuries. While the idea of decoding thoughts with AI is still in the early stages of development, it has the potential to revolutionize our understanding of the brain and the mind. As technology continues to advance, we may one day be able to use AI to read our own minds and unlock the full potential of our brains. So that's a look at how AI is being used to decode thoughts with neuroscience. It's a fascinating field with the potential to revolutionize our understanding of the brain and the mind. What do you think? Is this the future of AI? Let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching.